Hello, and thank you for listening to Renewables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Renewables. I'm your host, David Smart, Senior Vice President of Sales at BioStar Renewables. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always, especially to our regular guests. If you're not a regular guest and this is your first time on, please give us a follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're available. So appreciate everybody tuning in, listening, and those who are watching the video.
We are really excited about this week's episode. We have Phil Millett from Purestream with us. Phil, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited about the conversation today. We actually have worked with Purestream in some capacity, and we have a lot to unpack here. You have a lot of interesting things going on at the company, and all centered around water, water recycling, and sustainability. So you're the perfect guest for our show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, David, thank you for the invite, and it's our pleasure and my pleasure to be on with you today. And we've all enjoyed your podcasts in the past, and now to be a part of one is a real pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that, and glad to know that you've enjoyed some of the episodes. And we've got a lot more episodes coming up. I'll shamelessly plug the podcast real quick. Really focused on the ag side of our business and the nutrient recovery side of our business. So stay tuned for that. But let's dive in. Phil, tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and your background and how you ended up with Purestream.
Okay. So several years ago, 15 or 20 years ago, our founder, he recognized that there are more water problems out there than there are solutions. And he also recognized that there's technology that isn't being utilized. And so, and he's a friend of mine, and he started Purestream. And then a few years ago, he asked me if I wanted to be a part of the Purestream team, and I was ready, willing, and able, and I've never looked back, and really enjoy now working with this Purestream team.
Well,
all of my life. Oh, go ahead.
Please.
Well, all of my life, I've loved Mother Nature, and my father is a glaciologist of all things.
Wow.
And so when I was 7 years old, I was sliding down and playing on glaciers in Alaska, and ever since have loved Mother Earth, and been so impressed with just water and all that water does, and how important it is for the sustainability of life that we have, and so then when this opportunity was presented, I was really anxious to become a part of a company whose motto is to deliver clean water.
Yeah, it's a fascinating business, and you have a lot of different products. So I want to spend a little time there first. I'm looking at your website here on my other screen, and you guys have an absolutely beautiful website. And there's a lot of different applications that you can come in and bring value to. So I see oil and gas, water reuse, power generation, water, wastewater to clean steam, and others. It looks like there's even a mobile sort of solution. So if you don't mind, spend a little bit of time. We'll keep it high level. And of course, our listeners and viewers, if you're interested in learning more about this, I highly recommend you check out purestream.com, and we'll put in the show notes some ways that you can get in touch with Phil. But Phil, walk us through some of your applications at a high level.
Okay. Well, water can be contaminated in several different ways, and in gas and oil, then we have water and oil mixed. And you've been told all your life that water and oil don't mix, but in fact they do. And the flotation technology we have is an IGF, and we use that to remove the hydrocarbons from a water stream. And a hydrocarbon, when it's in water, is actually considered a suspended solid. So it's a part of a TSS, total suspended solid, versus a dissolved solid, like a chemical, like salt would be considered a TDS. And so the IGF that we have is for separating hydrocarbons from the water stream, and it treats the lion's share of the water that we treat. And we have a branch in Midland, Texas, and treat a ton of gas and oil produced water there. It's remarkable, David, when you understand the ratio of oil to water, I should say water to oil, that comes out of a well today. And with the new over the last several years, this enhanced oil recovery has been a big part of what we've been able to get out of the hydrocarbons that we've been able to recover. And but with those advances and with that enhanced recovery also brings more water. And so the ratio of water to oil can be 6 to 1 or 7 to 1.
Wow.
And even in some areas, even up to 20 to 1. And so we have 20 barrels of water for every barrel of crude. And what do you do with that water? And so that's the IGF. And then we have these thermal technologies that we use, and one of them is called the Avara, and the other one's called the Flash. And these are for really tough water situations. Everyone is familiar with reversed osmosis and those kind of filter products, and we still use those, and they treat a ton of water and very important part of what we do. But they have their limit as to how high they can concentrate the water, or what they can pull and what they leave behind. And so these technologies we can take it all the way to a solid, where we're pulling all the water out and just leave a solid. And so that's the Avara and the Flash. The Avara gives back a clean distillate, and the Flash gives off clean steam. And then we have the on-the-fly technology, and that is treatment through chemical. And so sometimes all you need to do to your water stream is it can just be treated chemically instead of filtering or floating something out or concentrating something up. Then you can actually just treat it chemically. And the fly, the efficiency of your chemical dosing is subject to the way that you mix a chemical into the stream, and then also the residency time that you give it. And so the fly technology really maximizes your chemical dosing. And so we include other technologies, and there's a ton of technologies out there, David. But yeah, that's kind of an overview of the fundamentals that we use.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of great information on your website. So our listeners and viewers, check out purestream.com, and there's a lot of really neat information on there. This is obviously, has huge positive implications and impacts for the environment. So talk a little bit about, Purestream's impact on the environment. I know from conversations and getting to know you that you look at things really holistically. But I guess maybe we could use your oil and gas kind of water reuse as an example, because I'm interested to know exactly what you all do with the water once you kind of recycle it. Is it stored and reused, back in the same system? But so I'm interested in that, and then talk a little bit just at a high level about, from your standpoint, the impact on the environment and how important this technology is.
Okay. Well, those are great questions, and so our impact can be measured just by the volume of water that we treat, and we've treated billions of gallons. I think our count is over 23 billion gallons today.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty big swimming pool. And so that's the kind of impact. But then what you need to do, David, is you need to think about so any industry, and we can't just focus on gas and oil, but any industry uses this magical molecule of H2O, and gas and oil is this huge consumer, and that the water needs to come from somewhere. And so how is that water sourced? And so is it taken from the stream? Is it taken from a well? Where is the source of that water? And if we can reuse this water, then that becomes our source, and that's what makes us so valuable. And so we're not pulling well water from the farmer. We're not pulling water out of the stream. We're actually treating this produced water and providing that to the producer for fracking and for other applications in the oil field. And so that's the environmental impact that we have right there. We're providing that source for the water instead of the river or the well. We become the source, and that's
amazing. And can you get to the point where that is really a closed loop system, where you're continuing to reuse and recycle and reuse the same water over and over again?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's not. There's water lost and gained throughout a typical gas and oil process, and so it's hard for us to call it a closed loop. There are times in mining, like in situ mining, where it is just a closed loop. So we're pumping it down and then getting it back, and then treating it, and just it's in this closed loop. Absolutely, yeah. That's a really neat way to do it, because then we're not relying, we're not a burden to Mother Nature in other ways.
Sure, that's fantastic. Well, there's a big renewable energy component to what you do. We're talking about reusing and recycling water, but talk a little bit about the solutions, your solutions, and how they promote renewables specifically.
Okay, so we are a power consumer, and so we have pumps and we have equipment that uses power, and anytime we can tie that power resource into a renewable, David, then that even increases our sustainability. And so if we're in an area that has a good solar radiation, then we use the photovoltaic cells and let that provide our energy. Or if we're close to wind, we do. Or we even have our own natural gas resource, where we're capturing methane in some of these processes, and we can use methane to run a gen set and then provide power to the grid. A lot of times this power, we say that we're using it, but a lot of times it is just a balance in between what's given to the grid and then what's taking off of the grid. But still, we love it when we can provide that offset through renewable energy.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've collaborated on our food waste digester that has some similar components to what you were just discussing, providing
Nice.
baseload renewables onto the grid while also cleaning up a lot of water and making our Super 6 fertilizer process. So that's a project that we like to brag about, and of course Purestream was an integral component there.
Well, it's neat to see all that you've done in the solar and the impact that BioStar has made in the solar industry. Remarkable what you guys have done, David. So
Well, I
thank you.
appreciate that. So I like to ask this question a lot. You talk with a lot of different folks across the country that are in different industries and have different problems. But is there something in general? Is there something that kind of rings a bell in your head? What keeps your customers up at night? What are people worried about? I like to ask our guests that, and I always think that's I get a lot of interesting responses from that question.
Well, that's a great question, and we like to ask that to our customer. And what is it? How can we take away a worry? And but it varies quite a bit. And so if you're in landfill, then you're worried about leachate. And what are you going to do with that leachate? You don't want to contaminate the water stream nearby, or you're concerned about whatever's going to leach through that field. And if you're a mine, then you're worried about your evap pond and the freeboard that you have left on your evap pond. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to you, well, not the worst, but something that would have a dramatic effect on your productivity is if you ran out of freeboard and you couldn't treat all this water that's coming out of the mine and that you're using for your refinery process. And so then you're worried about the freeboard in your pond. And then it might be disposal, or it might be costs. Sometimes we work with companies who, like in manufacturing, who have water with some bad actors in it, and they're paying these exorbitant amounts to haul the water off. And even then, if they're hauling it, then what do you do with it? And you put it in these disposal wells. And so sometimes it's discharge requirements that you're worried about, and having your water clean enough to put back into the stream, or sometimes it's freeboard on your pond, and sometimes it's just keeping the local sewer treatment facility happy. They don't want you sending really bad water, and so they have these regulations that you have to meet, and sometimes it's that. So yeah, there's just a host of different worries that our customer base has.
Sure. Well, we're certainly familiar over here with the cost of trucking water. You never want to have to do that if you can avoid it. So,
yes.
We're in the process of developing some digesters across the country, and both manure digesters as well as food waste digesters, like the one I mentioned in San Bernardino. And then we, of course, you're a part of this process, concentrate up the nutrients, from the effluent waste. And the whole point is to get rid of the water so that it's easier to ship and less costly to ship. But you got to do something with that water. Like you mentioned, at some point it's got to be treated and or disposed of. So the closer we can do that to our plant, the better. So
yeah, I could maybe tell an interesting story about that if you wanted, David, if we have time.
Please.
Yeah, so that process that you're talking about has so much sustainability to it, and it's a really neat thing that is being developed. So a cow, a milk cow, gives about the same amount of milk as it does manure. And so that's a lot of manure. And one of the challenges that a dairy has, particularly a big dairy, is what to do with that manure. And it was a really interesting conversation that I had a few months ago with the State Department of Agriculture, and he's the bureau chief. And I asked him, what's your greatest worry? What's your greatest challenge? And he said, the greatest challenge that we have is real estate. And I said, what are you talking about? Explain more. That's
so
an interesting.
Which state, real quick?
It's the state of Idaho.
Okay. Yep.
And I said, explain that to me a little more. And so he said, well, and it ties into exactly what you were just saying about the cost of shipping. And so a dairy has this manure, and they're looking for ways to utilize that manure. And so they pull some of those solids out of the manure and actually dry that and use that for bedding and recycle that. And but then they also, and some of them use digesters, and during this digestion process, it's a great process that captures the methane, which is of course the greenhouse gas that we have too many of today. And so that's a real renewable incentive to have a digester there. But still, what do you do with all this water? And you can evaporate that, but that's still it has an emissions limit to it, and then you use that for irrigation around your farm, around the dairy. Say you have cornfields or something like that around your dairy, and so then you use that manure. So the problem with that, David, is that you can build the phosphorus levels in the soil around your dairy. And what he meant when he said that they're running out of real estate is that the real estate around those dairies are pushing the limit of phosphorus in their soil. And phosphorus is the limiting agent for eutrophication. And eutrophication, of course, is an algae bloom. And so, and I guess the thing that the biggest worry is that we don't want to make the news, right? The last thing we want to do is make the news, and an algae bloom is going to make the news, and so, but the dairy can't afford to your point. You can't afford to ship the manure. It's too cumbersome and expensive to ship any long distance. And so here we have these dairies that are building these phosphorus levels up to the limit all around them. And if we can take that manure, and to your point, if we can pull clean water out and give that back to the farmer for farm use, and then we can concentrate those nutrients like the nitrogen and the potassium and the phosphorus, if we can concentrate those up and turn those into an organic fertilizer, then you can afford to ship those around. And the demand for organic fertilizer, you know where organic food is going, and how much of a need that is. And so it presents a really neat opportunity where we're solving problems on several fronts. We're delivering clean water. We're helping with the phosphorus levels. We're helping with the emissions. We're helping with the greenhouse gas, and either putting gas onto the grid or putting electricity onto the grid. Really becomes a neat sustainability project.
Well, it's a really interesting story, and it's certainly reassuring to hear that we're out there working on solutions that are so important, particularly to some of these states where there's a lot of dairy operations, swine operations.
Sure.
So I really appreciate that story and that color. And when you mentioned algae blooms, we talked actually with our chief agronomist, Alan Philo. We have a few episodes of the podcast if anybody's interested in learning more about our organic fertilizer product, Super 6, but he also talks about, the algae blooms in Lake Erie that it popped up, I think several years ago, and that's been an issue. And you talk about making the news. That one certainly did make the news, and I think the root of that is from runoff. A lot of the problems that you kind of outlined there. So
Yeah,
it's all really
well,
interesting stuff.
I'll just put a plug in for Alan. He's just he's got a brilliant mind and is a great member of your team, David.
Yeah, I love working with Alan. I learned something new from him. It seems like every day. So
Yeah,
to our listeners and viewers, go find our episodes with Alan Philo. They're really interesting. Phil, this has been really great. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And we're going to put some show notes in. We'll put in the Purestream website. I don't know, what's the best way to find you online? Are you on LinkedIn or Twitter, or how
yeah,
can our listeners and viewers get a hold of you?
yeah. There is a LinkedIn. You can contact me through LinkedIn and also through our website.
Great.
And yeah, so
Any closing thoughts?
Well, it's our parent company, Swire. Let me just put a plug in for them. So they obviously, we need to be, in order to be sustainable, we need to be financially responsible. But I'll tell you that our parent company, Swire, is more interested in the clean water that we return than they are interested in what we deliver to the bottom line. And that's what makes this business in this industry so exciting, and it's really neat to see a solar field go in and recognize the impact that you have, and it's neat to go see a water treatment plant and recognize the impact that you have, and so it's great to work with people like BioStar, and it's great to have a parent company like Swire, and it's great to be in this industry, David. That's I think my closing note.
Great. Well, I'm certainly fascinated by everything that you all are up to, and I hope you'll come back on the show and be a repeat guest. We love having folks back on to catch up and see what's new. And I just know a little bit about some of the projects that you all are working on, and I know there will be a lot of exciting updates later this year and even maybe next year. So thank you again for coming on. And this has been another episode of Renewables. I'm your host, David Smart. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Stay tuned. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of new episodes coming with some organic growers and focused on the ag side of our business. And of course, we're always talking renewable energy on Renewables. Phil, thanks again for being on the show, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, David. It's been my pleasure.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Renewables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.